I sort of was numb in that moment. I sort of just couldn't believe it was happening.
We can have a sense of normalcy, and then we're reminded normalcy includes tragedies.
I'm a rural hospital CEO, and any rural hospital CEO in the country is nervous about keeping their doors open. That's just our reality. Where you live shouldn't determine if you live.
Tech industry should look more like America and less like an old boys club.
I wanted to create a kind of like a safe and inclusive place for women to learn, to begin their road to coding.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Ruiz, and thank you for watching this half hour of news from across the country. We start by digging into some of the week's big headlines, including efforts to stop hate crimes against Asian Americans, plus the steps taken by some cities and states to declare racism a public health emergency. First, though, communities across the country are suffering after 2 mass shootings within 1 week of each other. Dan Grossman looks at how and why these recent shootings are different.
First Atlanta, now Boulder. In less than a week, nearly 20 people have died at the hands of an active shooter in a public setting. For some, it can feel even more traumatizing this time around, as these were the first shootings of their kind in more than a year. As the sun rose, the horizon in Boulder, Colorado was shrouded in grief.
Seen in front of the King Soopers.
As scenes of old play anew.
It was just like fireworks were going off.
Black vest, short-sleeved shirt.
I sort of was numb in that moment. I sort of just couldn't believe it was happening.
Seth Howard saw it with his eyes, but felt something.
We asked that question, how long?
Something Pastor Randy Spalding and so many of us have been wondering for quite some time.
I ask those questions like all of us do. I ask it in my particular faith perspective, but it's the same thing. Everybody's asking, again? How long?
Boulder and Atlanta are the first shootings of their kind since the pandemic started. The caution tape, images of sorrow, they're uncomfortably familiar, yet might feel different after months without mass violence during the pandemic.
We can have a sense of normalcy, and then we're reminded normalcy includes tragedies.
Elizabeth Sather is a licensed clinical psychologist who deals with law enforcement after tragedies such as these. She says re-experiencing traumas, even for us at home, can be harder because it's combined with the trauma of the pandemic.
They will compound, and so the symptoms like depression, sadness, sleeplessness, trouble with your appetite, tendency to isolate, all those are multiplied. So the symptoms will be generally more intense, and they will occur much more frequently.
It was just a night of really not knowing what was going on right across the street, right in my own neighborhood.
For Seth, he experienced that new reality Tuesday.
Just walking my dog in the morning, it's just not the same anymore. It sort of feels like it's been invaded in a way.
It's always difficult.
As did Randy.
These are people that I knew.
Knowing also the only way to a new horizon, a better one, will be by coming together as one.
We'll cry together, we'll weep and we'll grieve, but we won't be alone.
I'm Dan Grossman reporting.
Racism took front and center last summer, and debate about its effects continues. One state in the South just decided racism is a matter of public health. It's part of a growing effort around the country to declare racism a public health emergency.
Say her name! Reality!
When calls for racial justice spilled into the country's streets last year following the death of George Floyd, it laid bare the ongoing struggle of racial equality in America. Now the issue of racism is increasingly getting a new label: public health emergency.
We have to call a spade a spade.
Professor Richard Mason chairs the counseling department at Hampton University, a historically black college and university in Virginia, where the state legislature just passed a law declaring racism a public health emergency.
Poor quality of housing, discrimination, community disruption, those types of things are all embedded in racism, and it creates a sense of, traumatic experience for young people. And as you get older, we know based on the research that those things also affect your health.
Around the country, nearly 180 cities and counties have declared racism a public health emergency, along with 7 states. But Virginia is the first state in the South to do so.
Here in Virginia, the remnants of the segregated South are never too far away. This is the former segregated library built for Black people in 1940. It's since become the Black History Museum here in Alexandria.
The new law tackles 5 areas. It establishes a watchdog on policies addressing racism, makes permanent a commission examining racial inequity in state laws, specifically defines racism and health inequity, promotes community engagement, and establishes racial bias training for all state elected officials, staff, and state employees.
It is a crisis problem that kills.
Talia Fox is CEO of Kusai Global, a company that conducts the kind of racial bias and cultural sensitivity training Virginia is aiming for.
In the South, to be able to come up and say, listen, no more. We are going to name this what it is, and we are willing to look under the covers, see what's happening here, and address it step by step. So I think it's a very bold and courageous move, and I think it's important for the health and longevity of our nation and of our society.
How the new law shakes out in practice remains to be seen, but some are optimistic.
So if we can take the lead, the hope is that others will begin to follow and see the good things that can come out of this.
Hopeful for this first step. In Alexandria, Virginia, I'm Maya Rodriguez.
The Asian American community is hurting after a year with nearly 4,000 reported hate crimes. Now they're demanding change.
It's literally killing our community. Literally killing our community.
We are protecting the identity of this woman because anytime she speaks out against Asian hate crimes, she receives death threats.
Automatically, someone wants to shut us down. Someone wants to silence us. Someone doesn't want the truth out there.
But she says silence would be more dangerous. She's a part of the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, AAPI for short. She says the Asian community has been targeted many times throughout history, but in recent years, she says hatred has become normalized. And since the start of the pandemic, she and others have been living in a constant state of fear and anxiety.
They all see us as one homogenous group, and therefore it's easier to target one big group versus actually taking the time and being thoughtful and deliberate about how they're reacting to us and how they're treating us and why this is so wrong.
Scott Levin is a director with the Anti-Defamation League. Its mission is to fight anti-Semitism and secure justice and fair treatment to all. He says people referring to coronavirus as the China virus or Wuhan flu are partly to blame for hateful actions against the AAPI community.
When somebody attacks someone because they're Chinese and they want to blame them for the pandemic that takes place, it's horrible for the target of that crime, but it's also really a message that's being sent to the entire AAPI community that you're not welcome here.
According to a report from Stop AAPI Hate, a national coalition aimed at addressing anti-Asian discrimination, there have been nearly 3,800 hateful incidents since March of last year.
68% of the hateful incidents and crimes against the AAPI community are against women. And what we're finding is that oftentimes those that commit hate crimes and hateful incidents do it against those that are perceived to be the weakest. In addition, it could be that women just are reporting these crimes more than the men are at this time.
I'm glad that women feel the need and the anger and the confidence to show that in the way that they're comfortable and that they feel safe. And through reporting, perhaps we'll get more attention and resources to combat this once and for all.
So what will it take to stop this hatred? The AAPI woman we can't identify says a good place to start is to condemn all hate crimes or hateful incidents. But for people to really come together, she says we need to be willing to go outside our bubble and connect with people of different cultures.
It's really difficult to hate someone once you really get to know them as a human being and make that connection and hear their stories.
The next step is having the political will to make a change.
Thank goodness for these AAPI leaders in Congress who are taking that position to say enough is enough, we're doing something about it.
Levin says the No Hate Act would offer resources for law enforcement to investigate and prosecute when hateful incidents turn into hate crimes. He says we may never live in a world with no hatred, but we can live in a world where hatred is frowned upon and in some cases punished.
They don't really have the same sort of shame that there is for their hateful thinking, and I think what we really need to do is work on the culture.
As the pandemic marches on, hundreds of rural hospitals are at risk of closing. Coming up this half hour, why some hospital systems fear their doors may close and the financial help that's on the way. Welcome back. The newest economic stimulus bill includes money for hospitals. Without it, many rural hospitals will struggle to serve their communities. Chloe Nordquist explains how the money will help.
It's an all too familiar, somber sight. Plastic walls and other makeshift areas created on the fly in hospitals across the country as they care for patients with COVID-19. These are images from Lincoln Health, a rural hospital between Kansas and Denver, Colorado.
Where you live shouldn't determine if you live. I serve an older, poorer, sicker population. When you look at any of the statistics that come out of CDC, rural populations tend to have higher mortality rates. They tend to have lower life expectancy. They tend to have a higher frequency of chronic diseases.
Kevin Stansbury is the CEO of Lincoln Health. He says hospitals have not only been hit hard with the virus, but the financial impacts as well.
I'm a rural hospital CEO, and any rural hospital CEO in the country is nervous about keeping their doors open. That's just our reality.
17 rural hospitals across the U.S. closed in the first 3 quarters of 2020, according to stats from the American Hospital Association.
Our estimate done by the Chartis Center for Rural Health has 453 rural hospitals vulnerable to closure. The vast majority of those being in the Southeast.
Carrie Cochran-McLean is with the National Rural Health Association.
70-75% of rural hospitals' revenue comes from outpatient services on average. So if you look at having to suspend that revenue source for 2 to 4 and up to 6 months, that alone can have a big impact on facilities.
Luckily, rural areas have received some help through the CARES Act last year and now money on the way through the newest stimulus bill.
We don't know yet kind of what the parameters around that funding will look like. There have been a lot of bills with a lot in them. And so I think trying to kind of track on all of that is a lot for any kind of provider that is working day to day.
It's not easy to figure out.
We're really trying to understand exactly what the opportunities are within the new stimulus bill.
Jody Schmidt is the executive director of the University of Kansas Health System Care Collaborative.
Here in Kansas, we are second only to Texas in terms of the number of rural hospitals that are financial risk.
I've not seen any clear guidance yet on what that takes to qualify for that money. We're certainly going to try to qualify for it if we do.
As rural hospitals wait for more guidance on if and how to get additional funding, many are working to keep spikes in COVID-19 from happening again. For Lincoln Health, that looks like telehealth visits, reminding people to social distance, and getting those in the community vaccinated. Kevin says they're reaching about 55% immune in the community, a combination of those fully vaccinated and those who have had the disease and recovered.
We've seen a real drop. It's really gratifying to see the community come together.
I'm Chloe Nordquist reporting.
Next, this half hour, suffering from vaccine guilt. Why one expert says there's no reason to feel guilty about getting the vaccine before others. Plus, support for patients who are still recovering from COVID-19. How some already vaccinated people are stepping up and filling a huge void for patients still in the hospital.
With more people eligible for a COVID-19 vaccine, some people are having vaccine guilt, with friends and family members still on the waiting list. Experts say vaccine guilt and even some vaccine envy are real, but the best thing to do is get the vaccine when you can.
It's not the end of the world, right? There are a lot of things we do that are the right things that we sometimes feel guilty about.
That's Dr. Jim Jackson, a psychologist and the assistant director of the ICU Recovery Center at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. He says getting the shot isn't just about protecting yourself.
It's not just about you. It's about the society. It's about public health.
Number 6, she's ready for you.
So if you can get vaccinated, take that opportunity, and in so doing, you become part of the solution.
If you're feeling guilty because you got the vaccine before a parent, a spouse, or friend, remember they'll have their opportunity too. It may just take some time.
If the oxygen masks drop down, put yours on first, and then take care of someone else, right? That concept holds true in this case as well.
Millions of people have already received their COVID-19 vaccine. As Chris Conti shows us, some vaccinated volunteers, including doctors and nurses on the front lines, are now providing comfort to COVID patients who are suffering alone.
I think it's been enormously stressful.
Both inside and outside hospitals across America, a certain sadness has hung heavy this past year, much like a dark gray cloud.
When the virus came along, instantly we couldn't allow patients to have visitors in hospital because it was too risky.
As an anesthesiologist, Dr. Ben Moore and his colleagues have been worked to the brink of exhaustion, but reinforcements have started to arrive in the form of the COVID-19 vaccine.
The biggest side effect I had was just a great sense of hope. I mean, that's why I felt as soon as I got that.
After receiving his second dose back in January, Dr. Moore began to wonder.
I really started thinking about what does this now mean for me and the rest of society, really.
Fully vaccinated, Dr. Moore started coming back to the hospital after hours and visiting COVID patients, not to perform procedures, but to simply sit with them.
And it really helps. The patients really respond to it because they are lonely. Many of them are very anxious.
Because of COVID, visitors still aren't allowed in most hospitals across the country. So instead of suffering in solitude, Dr. Moore is offering patients his time.
To hold their hand, to sit with them, to chat with them, just having that physical presence in the room, I think has a huge importance.
This whole thing has really resonated with Dr. Moore's colleagues, so much so that he now has a running spreadsheet of more than 45 volunteers who have been vaccinated, willing to donate some of their time.
There is no reason why other places cannot run a program like this.
Dr. Moore took this video of volunteers doing this on their own time, still in full PPE to be safe. The program even has a name, Vaccinated Volunteers.
You feel that you can now interact with people.
Oftentimes, Dr. Moore and his colleagues will even call patients' family members on FaceTime.
The thing that I had not anticipated was how desperate these families at home are to hear any news about their loved one.
It's unclear when visitors will be allowed into hospitals once again. So for now, this idea has become a critical lifeline for patients.
There is a huge fear in people of being alone, suffering alone, and dying alone.
Alone no more.
Got a huge lot of people.
Dr. Moore hopes he has found a prescription for brighter days ahead. I'm Chris Conti.
Getting more women into tech. After the break, how some women are using their own experiences to support others on their road to coding. Plus, the good that comes from having more females in the industry. Thanks for staying with us. Tech is one of the fastest growing industries in the U.S., but women remain highly underrepresented in the industry. Bo Evans introduces us to a group of women who are trying to delete the gender gap behind the keyboard.
There's always a need for more women in tech.
This isn't the first time Kelly Revenaugh is the only woman in the room.
I was working in tech marketing and wanted to transition over into becoming an engineer.
She decided to make a jump into software engineering. But when she started a coding boot camp, she was one of just a few women.
I went through the Hack Reactor and Galvanized software engineering program in New York in 2019. When I was going through the program, there wasn't very many women in any of these programs or in tech in general.
A study by McKinsey & Company shows women make up only a quarter of the workforce, and other statistics show they make up just 14% of software engineers. Now she's created a support group within Galvanize, the company that runs world-famous coding bootcamp Hack Reactor. It's a space where women can share their experiences, mistakes, and questions with other women.
I wanted to create a kind of like a safe and inclusive place for women to learn, to begin their road to coding.
The road that has allowed Cindy Ryu to make a career U-turn.
And shortly after graduating, I started to work as an environmental consultant. I ended up getting laid off due to COVID. I've always been interested in coding, never really had any experience with it. So I decided to apply to Hack Reactor, and I'm currently a part of their Austin cohort.
It's part of an effort by Galvanize to increase diversity in tech.
We still have only 24% of computer scientists that are women, and despite women making up half the workforce, this number is abysmal.
Sam Klein is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Galvanize and says the spaces created by people like Kelly are important to getting more women into tech.
The tech industry should look more like America and less like an old boys club.
The hope is that groups like the one Kelly started can create a more equitable space for women in tech.
I really wish when I was younger I did have a role model who looked like me, who I saw was like successful and like in a leadership position, or not even a leadership position, just like even very low on the totem pole, but like in the industry.
It's been really cool to see women get excited about tech and not be intimidated by it.
There are plenty of women who are available to this workforce, and it's time for us to be more invested in ensuring that we not only attract those individuals into tech, but also that we retain them.
I'm Bo Evans reporting.
There's another half hour ahead with news stories on the pandemic. While some people are grateful for relaxed guidelines on masks, other people have nerves about the idea of unmasking. We'll also share how Goodwill is helping thousands of people find jobs across the country. Plus, are you ready to travel? We'll have how the industry is bouncing back. Those stories and more are coming up. I'm Elizabeth Ruiz. Stay with us.
So your family members might, be ready to take their mask off and ready to, follow the CDC guidelines as they've stated them. But you might have some hesitation or some anxiety, and that's okay.
Being able to have a job during the pandemic, it made me feel beyond grateful.
Goodwill can give you that foundational training and even see you through to placing you into employment.
One day he just said out of the blue, it's really hard when you can't be with the one that makes your heart go boom. When I heard that, I went, oh my God, we have a song there.
Makes my heart go boom.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for this half hour of news from across the country. Our first few stories focus on 3 important topics: the future of masks, jobs, and travel.
Face masks are part of our daily lives, and some people may be uneasy with the idea of leaving home without one. Usher Qureshi looks at how to deal with the anxiety of unmasking.
Wear a mask.
Wear your mask.
Elmo wears his mask.
For the better part of a year, PSAs,
it's easy, it's simple.
Political leaders,
keep wearing this mask.
And health experts,
I often myself wear 2 masks,
have been urging Americans to don cloth face masks to slow the spread of COVID-19.
A lot of us have been able to do that, condition ourselves to this new type of behavior of I get my purse, I get my car keys, and I get my mask.
Dr. Adiranke Pedersen is an instructor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Northwestern University Medicine. She says while the latest CDC guidelines say it's okay for fully vaccinated people to gather with one another indoors without a mask, it may take some time to process that.
We have to acknowledge the fact that our bodies might not respond to that intellectual and logical recommendation right away.
Like grief, she says everyone's experience and comfort level will be different.
So your family members might, be ready to take their mask off and ready to, follow the CDC guidelines as they've stated them, but you might have some hesitation or some anxiety, and that's okay.
Add to that, a lot of people are still vaccine hesitant. According to Pew Research, while more Americans say they plan to get vaccinated, 30% still say they don't plan to.
While we will continue to push vaccinations and, encourage people to get vaccinated. At the same time, each person is going to be experiencing kind of a different social context when it comes to their families and when it comes to work.
57% of Americans say they believe it will be a year or more before things get back to pre-pandemic normal, including 14% who expect it will take more than 2 years. Pedersen says it's important to acknowledge that everyone is experiencing this pandemic in their own unique way.
I really encourage people, if you have a family member or coworker who says, I still would like us to keep our mask on for now, I think it's okay to say, well, let's delay this next step.
In the end, experts say we're all in this together, and one size does not fit all. In Chicago, I'm Usher Qureshi reporting.
Millions of Americans have lost their jobs during the pandemic. Now one of the world's biggest nonprofits is helping to put them back to work.
Having so many people lose their jobs during this time is heart-wrenching.
While working this cash register at this Goodwill store, Jalen Cottrell is earning immediate income.
Would you like to round up to $33?
And gaining experience that can last a lifetime.
It gave me a lot of different experiences with diversity in people, building different customer service skills that lead me to my career.
Cottrell is one of the millions of Americans who lost their jobs during the COVID crisis. But with help from Goodwill Industries, he was able to find work.
Being able to have a job during the pandemic, it made me feel beyond grateful.
Well, grateful for this job,
I get a price check, register for.
Cottrell is transitioning to another industry after receiving training through Goodwill's BankWorks program, one of the nonprofit's many job training and support programs.
Our mission overall is to help individuals with disadvantage achieve their highest level of personal and economic independence.
Bill Hafer is a communications specialist with Goodwill. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports 10 million Americans are currently unemployed. But Hafer says Goodwill has opened up job opportunities for thousands of people across the country.
If you don't have a resume, you don't have job experience, you don't have a work background, the fact that Goodwill can give you that foundational training and even see you through to placing you into employment is just a wonderful thing.
Despite landing a new job in a new industry,
understanding that my drawer always has to be balanced,
Cottrell plans on still working at Goodwill once a week, saying this job is more than income.
Would you like to try to do a box for them?
It's about the experience.
To work at a Goodwill Center is a place of growth, and it's a place where you can aspire others, and the other people in this community will aspire you.
I'm Kai Beach reporting.
Anxious to get out and travel? So is everyone else. After a year of lockdowns and shutdowns and COVID infection numbers dropping with an increase in vaccinations, many families are planning and booking trips for this spring and summer. And these aren't just road trips anymore. People are ready for something new and different.
Views of our tree houses are 80% up since March last year.
That's Catherine Powell, Global Head of Hosting for Airbnb.
It is the coolest job. It's also, I think, the coolest title.
Powell supports the site's 4 million hosts, helping to create connections, and now, after a tough year, they're seeing a lot of interest in travel, but not just any sort of travel. Things like sleeping in a giant boot, or at an inn that looks like a dog, or a potato hotel.
We've had an incredibly difficult year, and for many in the US, it's been a really harsh, cold winter. And we're seeing that pent-up demand. We're seeing people wanting sunshine and warmth, and also outdoors.
There is, she says, a noticeable amount of what the industry calls pent-up demand.
We've heard clients who have been vaccinated, they want to get out. There's this vaccine travel concept, or an antibody trip. People who believe they are like their super figure, Superman, Superwoman when they were a kid, they're invincible, they want to get back out.
Jennifer Wilson Buttigieg is co-president and owner of Valerie Wilson Travel.
It's a mother, daughter, son-in-law business, and my mom founded it just about 40 years ago.
They're also one of the largest privately owned travel management firms in North America. According to Jennifer, to say they've had to get creative over the past year is an understatement.
There is no business plan for that. Having gone to Harvard Business School executive education, there is no business plan for being down 90% for 12 months.
But now that business is bouncing back in interesting ways.
There are some travel bubbles which were being created right now. Like there's a New York Milan flight, there's an Atlanta Rome flight, there's a LA or San Francisco Hawaii flight.
But COVID restrictions can be hard to follow, and Jennifer advises that you have an advocate.
This is so complicated. How do you keep up with every single country, every single state? Everybody's doing something different. It's a global pandemic. How are you able to keep track of it all?
Everyone is so confused where to go, what the policy is, what's the restriction, what's the quarantine, what's the testing. Those are the first questions. It's not, is this a new resort? Is this a new lie flat bed? What's the new restaurant? The entire paradigm's changed.
I mean, even thinking about travel is making people happier. They want to travel more. It's the most outdoor experience or wished for experience that they want, more than kind of going to sporting events or other live events. It's wanting to travel and to reconnect.
If you're wondering how to pay for it all, Powell says, consider hosting your home. That side of the business is also booming. I'm Stephanie Stone, reporting.
Next this half hour, Americans are being scammed like never before. How one man found out his photo was being used to scam other people, and the signs to watch out for so you don't fall victim to some of the most common scams out there. That's just ahead. Welcome back. 2020 was a record year for a lot of things, including scams. According to the Federal Trade Commission, we were scammed to the tune of $304 million last year. That's a 50% increase from 2019. Stephanie Stone reports that a lot of it stems from what we do online.
You know, I'm getting 10 to 20 notifications a day that my identity is being used all over the world.
Tom Ernsting is stuck. He needs his social media following to keep his modeling career current, but that huge following has been quite the source of grief.
I've seen these catfishers take my picture and insert it into their driver's license or their passport portfolio. And they're very great at photoshopping, and you would never know that it was a fake.
Basically, he's been catfished, which means people are using his pictures and pretending to be someone they're not online.
I am the face of a lot of scams. I haven't fallen victim to a scam, but my identity is used all over the world to scam women, primarily women.
And he's got the emails and letters to prove it. Some of those victims eventually did their homework and found the real man behind the picture. He's heard terrible stories about relationships being broken and hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. One woman reached out from Canada and said, I just wanted to inform you that if this picture is in fact you, then I wanted you to know that a scammer is using your image to scam women.
How do you protect yourself? How do you make sure that you don't fall victim to one of these scams?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is don't accept friend requests from people you don't know.
David McClellan is the CEO and founder of socialcatfish.com. It's a search engine that helps you verify who people say they are online.
This is probably $1 billion industry, and people just don't realize it, and they think it could never happen to them. Most of the people that we talk to have come to us and said, I never thought this could happen to me, and it did.
There are all sorts of scams out there. McClellan says basically any site that has a chat option can invite unwanted attention.
They go and they prey on people's emotions, and so they'll randomly message people. They'll steal photos from people like Tom, and they go and they say they've fallen in love.
He says watch out for the signs. If they're asking for money, that's a huge red flag. If they consistently use broken English, you're likely dealing with a scammer in another country. He says do your research before you engage.
I believe there are groups of people around the world just sitting in a room using my pictures and coming up with identities and just reaching out to basically women between 45 and 55, single women who are, they're being catfished.
Tom does what he can by reporting everything he finds, but he wants others to know they need to do their homework before they start interacting with people they don't know online.
You have to do your legwork. I know, immediately Google search my picture or the person's picture. You can ask for a video chat. Don't let them put off the opportunity to video chat you.
The authorities can help, but some things are out of U.S. jurisdiction, and the scammers know that. The FTC says reverse searches help, and it also helps if you ask a lot of questions. You just might find out the truth before it's too late. I'm Stephanie Stone, reporting.
You hear it all the time, parents telling their kids to eat their vegetables. It turns out it's adults who need help managing their fruits and veggies. Next this half hour, which food adults need to eat more and how to soak up as many nutrients as possible.
Spring is here, and it's time to start thinking about planting. A lot of people do veggies, and tomatoes tend to top the list, even though technically they're a fruit. If tomatoes are growing in your garden this year, our partners at Simplemost have some tips for what to plant with them and what to keep away. Some of the tomatoes' worst enemies include peppers and other nightshades. Tomatoes are also nightshades, and you shouldn't plant them together. They attract the same hornworms, and that's a way to get your garden eaten quickly before you ever get a chance. And anything in the cabbage family like broccoli and Brussels sprouts will suck the life out of your tomatoes by taking all their water and nutrients. Asparagus is a friend of tomatoes. It can help keep certain worms away. Carrots can also help keep your tomatoes from getting too dry, since they make the soil looser and help it hold more water. If you wait until your tomatoes are small to plant your carrots, the carrots will be ready right about the time the tomatoes need more space. Keep it simple and watch your garden grow.
Only 1 in 10 adults is eating the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables every day. Reporter Kai Beach talked with medical experts who are trying to fix that.
Produce to me has been my life and my passion.
Working in the grocery industry for more than 40 years,
these are just the Halo Clementines.
Mike Miranda knows the power of produce.
For the older people like myself, it is crucial that we eat more fruits and vegetables to have that strong heart and the energy that we all need.
Miranda is a produce manager.
You can have up to 30 varieties in one season.
While his family's diet is about 70% fruits and vegetables,
it's a lot of our green beans and totes.
Health experts say most Americans aren't eating nearly enough.
Everybody should be aiming to get 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day.
Dr. Ann Thorndike is with Harvard Medical School. She says new research from the American Heart Association shows eating 2 servings of fruit and 3 servings of vegetables per day help people live longer, healthier lives, while also lowering the risk of several chronic diseases. But the benefits only happen if this diet is done consistently.
And I think that's the trick. This is something that you need to do every day. It's not something you do once a week.
Thorndike says while fresh, frozen, and canned produce all have similar health benefits, all varieties don't have the same nutritional value.
Starchy fruits and vegetables do not confer the same benefit. So when I say starchy fruits and vegetables, I mean corn and peas and white potatoes.
Some of the best produce to eat are green leafy vegetables and citrus fruits, especially if eaten whole. Whereas juicing actually extracts essential vitamins and minerals. While this study found that people who ate more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day did not see any extra health benefits,
Making sure that the customer gets nothing but the best quality.
Miranda still plans on consuming as much produce as possible.
I think it's incredible. I think it's great just because for the longevity of life and the quality of life.
I'm Kai Beach reporting.
Even during a pandemic, love conquers all.
'Cause you make my heart go boom.
2 artists with disabilities fell in love before the pandemic, but they've been separated since. Coming up, how they're using art and music to stay connected to one another. Thanks for staying with us. This half hour ends with a sweet love story. Prior to COVID-19, 2 artists living with disabilities found love. They've kept their relationship alive during the pandemic through theater and virtual video chats.
Hi, my name is Sam.
Hi, my name is Jewel.
Pure soul, capture her now.
Jewel Munch and Sam Vidine are professional artists. They act, dance, and sing at Interact Center for the Visual and Performing Arts. It's a one-of-a-kind center where artists living with physical or cognitive disabilities have the opportunity to create and perform original works. Jean Calvert is the founder and artistic director.
We do shows in major venues like the Guthrie Theater. We've toured nationally and internationally, and we've been around for our 26th year.
Jewel is living with Down syndrome and Sam is on the autism spectrum, but they prefer to be recognized for their talent.
If you're slightly for slapstick, it's a stick in the mud.
They both take their jobs very seriously, but outside of work, Jewel and Sam have found love.
I remember the summer of 2018, he wrote me a card saying he has a crush on me.
Sam confessed his love to me by calling me on the phone.
Jean says the two make a great pair.
I was really happy because that's hard to do, for everybody to find a good relationship. But in the disability world, you just got that many more hurdles sometimes.
They started dating September 7th of 2018, and they've been inseparable since.
We tell each other about how cute we are because of love names like Buttercup, Cutie Pie.
And we like going on dates in restaurants and watching a movie together. We like supporting each other and cuddling. We did the cuddling thing before the COVID hit.
As much as they love physically holding each other, Jewel and Sam haven't been able to spend time together in person for more than a year.
Sometimes it's been hard. We do the best we can, and we have virtual dates on holidays or and my birthday and stuff.
Their loving relationship has continued virtually, but Jewel admits he misses comforting Sam in person.
One day he just said out of the blue, "It's really hard when you can't be with the one that makes your heart go boom." And I thought, when I heard that, I went, oh my God, we have a song there.
I hug you so much 'cause I love you so much.
Those sweet words are now lyrics in a song for their next performance titled Zoomtopia, a series of stories about how artists at the company have handled the pandemic.
Makes my heart go boom.
The show is expected to open its virtual curtains in June.
We're looking forward to doing this scene together because we've been working so very hard on this.
And the two will continue to love each other through the screen until they can meet in person again.
I love you so much, yes I do.
I miss you too, and you know that I do, 'cause you make my heart go boom.
You can't help but smile after that. Thank you so much for joining us for this half hour of news and storytelling from across the country. I'm Elizabeth Ruiz. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.